gonna get my back blown out in peace. You think I got time to talk about a divorce that's a year old?
When people first heard the rumor that Teyana and Iman Shumpert were seen together again after everything that happened, nobody could believe it was true. For months, it had felt like their entire relationship was completely over. Every blog had dissected the collapse, and fans were convinced there was no way back. The errand scandal had left Teyana's life in pieces, and Iman seemed like he was determined to keep his distance. But then came that night when everything shifted, and everyone watching realized that maybe some love stories just don't end the way we expect. It was almost impossible to keep up with all the headlines after Teyana and Aaron Pierre's private drama leaked to the public. One day, Teyana was just another celebrity sharing pictures of her family and her projects, and the next day she was the main character in the messiest story online. The audio clip where Aaron called her a mistake hit the internet like a lightning bolt. Even people who didn't usually care about celebrity gossip found themselves pressing play, listening in shock as he said words that sounded colder than anyone could have imagined. Teyana hadn't just been humiliated, she'd been blindsided. Some people said they saw it coming. They said Aaron never looked comfortable in public with her, that he always seemed distant, like he was waiting for something better. Others argued that Teyana had rushed into the relationship too soon after her marriage fell apart. Whatever the truth was, it didn't change the way she looked in those photos after the scandal. Her eyes red and swollen, her shoulders slumped, her face set in that expression that said she was trying not to fall apart. Iman, meanwhile, didn't say much at all. He didn't post cryptic captions or clap back at trolls. He just went quiet. And somehow that silence made people even more curious. Was he angry? Was he heartbroken? Or was he relieved that he finally had an excuse to walk away for good? For weeks, fans speculated about whether he'd ever forgive her, or if he was done for good. Some people hoped he'd never look back. Others prayed he'd find it in his heart to understand that nobody's perfect, that maybe Teyana deserved another chance to be happy. But most people agreed on one thing. Seeing them together again felt impossible. That's why the reunion was so shocking. It wasn't planned. It wasn't staged. It wasn't announced to the world with a glossy magazine cover or a carefully worded statement. It happened by accident, in the middle of a celebration neither of them could have predicted would bring them face to face after all the hurt. They were both invited to a close friend's birthday party. The friend was someone they'd known as a couple, someone who had stood by them through their happiest milestones. According to people who were there, Teyana almost didn't go. She spent half the afternoon debating whether she should stay home and avoid the tension. But in the end, she decided she was tired of hiding. She deserved a night out. She deserved to feel normal again. When she walked in, she kept her eyes down, trying not to think about whether Iman would be there. But the second she looked up and saw him standing across the room, her heart stopped. He was talking to someone, holding a glass of water, but the moment he spotted her, he froze too. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The music kept playing. People kept dancing and laughing and clinking glasses. But Teyana and Iman were locked in their own little bubble, remembering everything they'd shared and everything they'd lost. A few witnesses said it was like watching a movie. One of them whispered that she'd never seen two people look so sad and so relieved at the same time. After what felt like an eternity, Teyana walked over. She didn't know what she was going to say. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she couldn't stand across the room from him pretending they were strangers. Iman set down his drink. He looked her in the eyes and she realized how much she'd missed that simple thing, just being able to look at him without feeling ashamed. Neither of them said anything right away. They didn't have to. The hug happened almost by accident. One moment they were just standing there, and the next, he had his arms around her, and she was pressing her face into his shoulder. People around them tried to act casual, but everyone was watching. Someone snapped a picture, and within minutes, it was online. The caption read, "Teyana and Iman reunite at friend's party. Are they back together?" The internet exploded. Twitter filled with old photos of their happiest moments. Fans wrote long threads about how they were soulmates, how they'd been rooting for them from day one. Instagram was flooded with comments begging them to reconcile. Even people who'd been critical of Teyana during the Aaron scandal admitted they felt emotional seeing her back in Iman's arms. But in that moment, Teyana wasn't thinking about public opinion. She was just thinking about how safe she felt standing there with him, even if she didn't deserve it. Eventually, the two of them slipped outside to get some air. The patio was mostly empty, just a couple of people smoking and scrolling through their phones. They found a quiet corner, and for the first time in months, they actually talked. Nobody could hear everything they said, but a few photographers managed to capture photos of them standing close, Teyana wiping tears off her cheeks while Iman held her hand. Insiders later shared that the conversation was raw and painful. She apologized for everything: the chaos, the embarrassment, the way she tried to pretend she was fine when she was falling apart. He told her he'd never stopped caring, but he didn't know if he could ever trust her again. The thing that struck people most when the photos surfaced was how vulnerable they looked. This wasn't a glossy, perfect celebrity reunion. This was two people trying to figure out if love could survive betrayal and regret. By the time they left the party, it was clear that nothing had been fully resolved. They didn't announce that they were back together. They didn't pose for a happy picture. But they left side by side, and that was enough for fans to believe there was hope. Within hours, hashtags started trending. Hashtag Teyana and Iman forever. Hashtag love wins. Hashtag please get back together. Fans posted their favorite memories of the couple. Clips from their reality show, photos from award shows, old interviews where they talked about how they were each other's best friend. Some people tried to be cynical, saying it was just nostalgia making everyone soft. But most people couldn't help rooting for them. After everything that had happened, after all the headlines and humiliations, there was something beautiful about the idea that love could circle back around when you least expected it. Teyana posted something the next morning that only fueled the speculation. It was a simple photo of a sunrise, the caption just a single sentence: "Sometimes love finds you again." She didn't tag Iman. She didn't mention him by name. But everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. The comments were flooded with heart emojis, prayers for healing, and messages from people who said they believed in second chances. Iman took a little longer to post anything. When he finally did, it wasn't dramatic. It was a picture of their daughter holding a paintbrush, her face lit up with concentration. The caption said, "For her." It felt like a quiet reminder that no matter what happened between them as a couple, they would always be connected as parents. Some people took it as proof he was only being polite for the sake of their child. Others said it was his way of showing that family still mattered most. As days passed, insiders began sharing small details about what was happening behind the scenes. Teyana and Iman were reportedly texting more. They were taking things slow, trying to rebuild the foundation that had cracked under the pressure of fame, temptation, and hurt feelings. They weren't rushing into anything. There were no public declarations that they were officially back together. But for the first time in months, there was hope instead of bitterness. Fans couldn't help but start drawing comparisons. They began lining up Teyana and Iman's complicated, heartbreaking journey alongside other celebrity couples who had walked through fire and somehow come out stronger. Some pointed to Beyoncé and Jay-Z, how they turned pain into art, how they stood hand in hand on tour stages after surviving infidelity and heartbreak. Others mentioned Cardi B and Offset, whose messy public fallouts had often ended in surprise reunions. The internet loves a redemption arc, especially one tied to love. But the truth, the one that rarely trends, is that every relationship has its own language, its own breaking points, its own limits. And what worked for someone else might never work for Teyana and Iman. Because healing doesn't come with a blueprint, and love doesn't follow hashtags. What truly mattered was whether they could carve out their own path, together or apart, without getting lost in what everyone else wanted for them. Because the noise was loud, the speculation was constant, and the pressure to either reconcile or completely walk away was immense. Still, no one really knew where things stood. Not fully. And maybe that's what kept people invested. There was something deeply human in watching their story unfold. Maybe it was because we all want to believe that love can survive the worst of storms. That the history we build with someone can be enough to outweigh the damage. Or maybe it was simply because seeing them together, even briefly, reminded us that the best things in life, connection, forgiveness, growth, are rarely clean or easy. And so, as the weeks turned into months, the world kept watching, waiting, wondering. Was that quiet reunion at their daughter's birthday party a sign of healing or just a one-time truce for the sake of family? Were the smiles genuine or just polite? No matter how many times they were photographed together, no matter how often they posted vague captions about growth and peace, the truth was only known to them. Only they knew if their hearts were open again. Only they knew if they were willing to risk it all one more time. But for the fans who had rooted for them since the beginning, the hope alone was enough. Because in a world that moves too fast and forgets too easily, there's something unforgettable, almost sacred, about watching two people try to find their way back to each other after everything has fallen apart. And maybe that's why this story captured so many hearts. Because even in the messiest moments, even when everything seems broken beyond repair, sometimes love has a way of surprising you. Sometimes it shows up at a party you almost skipped. Sometimes it wraps you in a hug when you least expect it. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you a second chance when you thought you'd already lost it all.